Hello, ladies and gents. This will be as short as we can make it, despite Alex being involved. So who knows? It might go on for a while. But this is an important feature that we decided to make because we cannot help but notice hordes of people making huge mistakes, and other people that aren't making mistakes, they're doing so deliberately. And that's Fed posting, the racial slurs, symbolism, and things like that. And people make the mistake of thinking because anonymous people do that, or they see people do that, that they can, or they speak to someone that does it and seems to get away with it, that they can. But ultimately, you have to think about what is in your interest and your people's interest, especially if you live in the United Kingdom. I see far too many people adopting language and behavior which does not represent our cause and our message. Now, that's an important key word in this video: representation. Do your actions represent what we're trying to achieve? Now, something I say often is loving your own is not the same as hating others. And that is what it says on the tin. And even adopting such a policy is deemed as dangerous, which is ridiculous. But that's the way that our system has fallen. But loving your own is not the same as hating others, is as safe as a policy as you can possibly live by when you have every possible boulder rolling towards you as it is. And one thing that bothers us is seeing people go by the wayside unnecessarily because of stupid mistakes. And many of the people you see behaving like this are doing so to lead you down the wrong path. They're doing so to get a result. Not to necessarily. Many people will jump on anonymous opportunities to reel out things that they're thinking in the week or things that are bothering them. But that's in a smaller number than you think, because there is a large number of people online that are genuinely there to coax things out of you that will either misrepresent you, your family, us, or worse, to see you in trouble. Because after all, our side of things don't really give the opposition the things that they need to back up their claims about us. After all, we try and give our message off as well as we can. We're not the disgusting people that the mainstream would say. So they have to fabricate that reality. Do you want to give it to them? Now, Alex, you've obviously had a history of making the odd mistake here or there. I certainly have. But it's safe to say that today and in the future, we have to adopt a far more careful policy, and not just adopt this policy, but try and help others adopt this policy.
Yes, anyone who compels you to anger or emotional impulse makes a slave out of you because you're not the master of your impulses during that time. Entrapment operatives will do everything that they potentially can to get a rise out of you, from calling you fat when you're an ectomorph, mantoid-looking motherfucker, to far more spicy things. But the point of the matter is that everyone who is a right-wing nationalist thought leader or aspires to be should possess lethal acute awareness of glow-in-the-dark entrapment operations. You've gone into quite a good degree of detail when it comes to outlining the basic principles of how they go about doing their business and why they do that. I think it's absolutely necessary that everyone be on board with expose and expel entrapment operatives from their groups. For example, any group that is compromised, we will automatically and immediately leave it, specifically because it's not safe for us to be there, and everyone else there is also not only under duress, but being entrapped by people whose goal it is to be online predators it's very important to have awareness of this. Otherwise, you get caught off guard and then they destroy you and everything that you represent by compelling you to emotional impulse. It is absolutely necessary that if you come across a group that has Fed posting in it, leave it for your own security.
It comes down to confidence in oneself. I was explaining this to someone the other day. You have to find who you are first before you can start mixing in some of these groups. And I'll explain. If you find yourself in a space and there's 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 people in a voice chat, and they are pressuring you to say or do something which doesn't represent you and isn't legal in your country and isn't the reason that you was brought to the table, you have to remain staunch in yourself to not allow peer pressure to push your shoulders, but to turn around and think, do you know what? If you lot, who won't matter next week, are that desperate to see me in trouble, then you're beneath me. Because once again, we return to what is in your interest and the interest of your people. You're on the back foot from the word go here. This is why I cannot advise people enough to exhaust the avenues of the positive and reject the horrific roads which are consistently negative. Now, we're all going to think what we think. We're all going to have our own opinions. That's something else. But often Alex and I will say, hide your power levels. And I think that, you should all work on doing this as well. Not that we always make a good job of it. Who can? As I've said often, we're certainly not trained in this. We certainly didn't go to any sort of media school or study politics or anything like that in university. All of this had to come from scratch by the necessity that was pushed upon us by seeing the world fall apart. So Alex here might sound like he's straight out of Cambridge, but he's not. I was not particularly keen on school. So there's many great minds out there that are either A, dormant, or B, wasting themselves. And they're never going to join a side that makes sense, that represents morality, if all they see are things that don't kindle their interest.
Also, there's another thing that you can do that helps a lot. Always make sure that you record, archive, and keep a catalogue of feds and entrapment operatives and their doings done. Why do you do this? Because the Antifa handbook says specifically, once they know who you are, you're meant to go dark for 9 months to 2 years. So the more they try to entrap you, the more you build up archives and training resources for the Britannic right-wing intelligentsia to know exactly who and how they go about their business. The point is that when they come across slack-jawed lemmings, they manage to get away with it and get blindingly good results at entrapment. A bare minimum standard is necessary to be able to discern, acknowledge, and then expel entrapment operatives from your groups. There is a bare minimum standard for every aspiring right-wing nationalist in England and the general Anglosphere to know their tactics, to discern them, to call them out, and then to catalogue and archive them as training materials for the rest of the right wing. Everyone involved in what we do should catalogue and archive every single last entrapment operative and their methodologies. Turn them into training materials. It drives them nuts.
And remember, Antifa aren't doing nothing. They're watching. So they are on here trying to manipulate you. If they're not doing that, they're at least looking in. So they're not all just sitting around doing nothing. I mean, they are, but not when it comes to you, they're not. So assume that people are out to get you. Assume that people have bad intent, because otherwise you wouldn't be driven into these poxy platforms, would you? You know, we wouldn't be here. That these situations, not most activists wouldn't exist, or journalists, or sorry, well, I'm sure you know what I mean by journalists, non-mainstream journalists. None of them would exist. So always assume that these people that live within the world of anonymity may just be up to no good. So may some public faces. You cannot assume. And you only get your anonymity once. But let's talk about anonymity for just a moment. It's important to many people. It should be respected, unless it is used to damage those who are not anonymous. So, speaking from a biased place, possibly, when you see anonymous people trying to harm and attack people that have already made that leap, or sacrifices, or don't necessarily live the best life in the world because of the fact they're no longer anonymous, when you see them going out of their way whilst living their comfortable life to harm someone from the shadows who is not in that comfortable life, me personally, I no longer respect their anonymity. I don't sympathize with their right to anonymity. But all others, yes, I do expect people to respect others' anonymity and protect it. And just because you might not be an activist or might not have done X, Y, and Z does not mean you are not incredibly valuable, because I'm also hearing this across the chain as well. People being told they need to dox themselves and stuff like this. You know, let me remind you, you could make an enemy online and that person could decide to out you. What have you already given them? There's loads of silly voice notes of me swearing and saying silly cusses and things like that. But what have you given them? Loads of racial slurs? Is that how if you put your face out there one day, then you want it to be under your terms and representing yourself. You don't want someone else to put your face out with all of these things you've said to misrepresent you because that's what you said in the moment, but they don't know you. They don't know what you mean. And then even if you was to climb a mountain and pick a flower, which was the only flower in the world which cured every disease in the world, you'd still be the guy you'd just be the N-word guy, or you'd just be the racial slur guy. That's all you'll ever be. There is no succeeding that once that's the representation of you. So what I'm saying is, own yourself, own your own representation. If you say, oh, I don't care, and that's the representation of you, so be it. But understand the risk that you pose to others. So it's selfish in my eyes to say, you don't care, I'll say what I like. Okay, well, that could affect people down the chain and our side and misrepresent all of us. So we all act childishly now and then. We all have arguments. We all make silly jokes against each other. But there should be boundaries. Because if you practically, realistically intend to make any effect in this world, that's going to involve real people on the ground. And the things you say will catch up with you. So everything's already stacked up against you so much. Why would you need to make an enemy out of the rest of the world when the powers that be are doing everything in their power to do that for you?
Yes, the enemy has enough ammunition and fuel to lob and use against the general Anglosphere right wing without you giving them more ammunition. Two-step process. 1, get the hell rid of them. 2, catalog and archive everything for posterity and for everyone else. These 2 steps, if taken properly, will result in them being terrified of you, specifically because they don't come across people who have operational security standards, who also like to have a laugh at seeing their amateurish entrapment operations fail miserably because of how amateur they are. But they're as amateur as they are persistent, which means that we get almost nigh on infinite training materials of their methods, their efforts, their emotional impulses at the time. You can create an entire system of understanding the cause-effect relationship between what they do, why they do it, and what kind of person does this. So don't consider them as neutral anon parties on the internet. Anyone who is conducting entrapment operatives, treat them as an enemy operative and turn their spiel into training materials. That is the correct way to go about things and to maintain operational security to the highest, most standards. Anything other than that is subpar and will result in you either wasting your time, which is their priority, number one, or two, getting entrapment, criminal entrapment materials on you, which is their second goal. Be wary of entrapment to criminal acts. They try to get you to say something or do something that is criminal in order to get you banged up. And secondly, they waste your fucking time, okay? Anyone who is a pathological time waster needs to be dogged the fuck off. No middle ground, no leniency, no centrism, no exceptions. Okay. I think we've about covered it, sir, to a decent, good enough, detailed standard. Are there any remarks further that you have, sir? I just wanted to let everyone know that the enemy has entire offices full of entrapment operatives, from Tavistock to Redacted, to UC Berkeley. And they not only get their kicks out of this, but they are literally trying to win a mimetic information and cultural fourth generational war on the peoples, the sovereign citizenry of the Anglosphere West. Okay? When you realize exactly how malicious, depraved, and evil these sick fucks are, you start to treat it as a semi-military operation when it comes to operational security, specifically because of how much money and how much manpower they have to try and social engineer your audiences or to entrap you or waste your time. Their victory condition is twofold. One, waste your time. Two, entrap you into criminal intent and make an archive and file on you. That is why you have to make the archive and file on them and then release it to your audiences after having dogged them off. That is the correct way to go about it. Remember this the next time you come across entrapment glow-in-the-darks, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, get rid of them. Secondly, archive everything.
So we'll leave it there. I think we've said enough. And I could
It's
go
important. It's very, very important, this topic, though, for the general audiences, because there's a way of going about it. And no one explains the specific way that you go about ensuring that you're secure and protected from these entrapment predators. Shall we call it exactly what they are? Entrapment predators.
Now, just before we close up, I'll finalise on the point for those of you out there that will be saying it's incorrect to talk like this or weak. I'll remind you that if you intend to film or carry out projects in some of the most dangerous places in the West, then you need to have your head switched on because the odds are already stacked against you. So I'll remind you that if other people are trying to put you in a situation that makes your job harder, your life harder than it already is, do not feel insecure, do not waver in the face of someone else's request or attempt to peer pressure you. So there's going to be leaders out there who say you can say what you like, you can do what you like. Well, they're incorrect, to be polite about it.
Not only are they incorrect, they're dismissing and obfuscating genuine, active threats to the right-wing Anglosphere, sir. They are doing a disservice not only to themselves, but to their followers and audiences as well. It ought to be pointed out keenly and in no uncertain terms. Sir, go ahead.
It's all about being shrewd, isn't it? To be shrewd, or to be as shrewd as you can be. Obviously, everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes will happen. But for a mistake to happen, it means you had to have been paying attention in the first place.
Anyone who tells you don't be weary of entrapment predators and operatives is either, in the best case scenario, an amateur and fucking useless because they endanger their own audiences, or secondly, they allow entrapment predators in their groups specifically because they don't give enough of a shit about the security of their audiences. Best case scenario, amateur, slack-jawed retard. Worst case scenario, operative.
No good. But you've got to ask yourself why you're here.
Pretty much.
Are you here because you care? Are you here for the right or the wrong reasons? If you're here because you care, you're going to want to try and keep as many people safe as possible. Us, people think we are nasty. People think we're the bad guys. They don't really know us. They don't know why we adopt some of the policies and things we do, because they don't understand what it is to be us. But everyone's got their own life, their own scenario, and ours is what ours is. So I can't expect people to understand that. But that's when you sort of have to sacrifice your humility a little bit and think to yourself, well, you know you're doing the right thing. So the groupthink and the false celebritydom shouldn't really come into your mind. You should carry on. And for many people, I find in the world of interesting activism, I find the people that can do something fantastic, and because it would ruin it or destroy what they've done if they told anyone, would keep it a complete secret. Therefore, smashing the idea that they're in this purely to be recognized for everything they do. And hang on, battery.
So I wanted to bring up a brief conclusory point on my part, which is the following. If there is a heat and cold shadow war that involves frontline mimetic information and cultural warfare, right, then there are soldiers and operatives in this heating cold shadow war -- mimetic information and cultural war. Entrapment operatives -- entrapment predators are the frontline soldiers of the liberal internationalist hoi polloi. Ladies and gentlemen, you should treat entrapment operatives not merely as anon civilians, but as designated enemy status in the heat and cold shadow war. Repeat, entrapment operatives are designated enemy status in the heat and cold shadow war with the Anglosphere right-wing Britannic intelligentsia. That is all. And anyone who tries to apologize on their behalf or excuse entrapment operations in any group whatsoever, best case scenario, they are useless and amateurs when it comes to operational security. Worst case scenario, they're one of them. Keep this in mind.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And just to summarize, remember, think about what represents you and your loved ones, because I think many people don't understand the risk until it affects their loved ones. These are institutions that are out to get you. There's nothing rebellious about being a radical leftist, an anarchist, or an anti-fascist. These are institutions and institutionalized organizations which are very
well
funded.
moneyed, well funded, well manpowered, not dismissible, not civilians, not
Yeah.
anons, not innocent.
There are many civilians who are brought into anti-fascist intel and so on, but they are expendable to the huge monster which will run them. So most of the wallies that you see on the street with balaclavas on, these are replaceable assets which, if one of them gets in trouble or goes missing, they don't really care because they can replace
Yes,
them.
the outermost tentacles of the monster under the staircase can be sliced off, and the monster will be completely fine without them, without 1 out of 500,000 tentacles, right? Their lemmings
And
are
by the
indeed
time,
expendable.
it's growing back,
Pretty much, yes. But you strike at enough vital points. You deal serious damage, sir, to their narrative. You know that Klaus Schwab is writing a new book called The Great Narrative or something like that. Speaking of which, we need to. I need to narrate some chapters of Klaus Schwab's The Fourth Industrial Revolution, where he says, "Let's cull 3 billion souls because they are hollow vessel, useless eaters." This is the philosophy and mentality of both Bilderberg and the Oxford Eugenics Society. So keep in mind that the entrapment operatives are the tiny little tentacle that wants to drag you away. And then the core body of the beast has people like Mr. Schwab affirming and asserting, let us cull 3 billion hollow vessel useless eaters. So you're dealing with ontological evil from the edge of the tentacle to the body of the beast. Do not take it lightly, ladies and gentlemen. First, you dog off the entrapment operatives, then you turn their efforts into training materials for the Britannic right wing. That is what you do.
So I'll continue my summarization so we can conclude. Representation, as I said, of yourself and your loved ones, it does go down the line. But there is a world out there for those that do want to one day put their face out and give honest arguments. You can live that life. It's just not going to be the most fun thing you've ever done, and you're going to have lots of hurdles. But if you think you can jump them hurdles, then do it. But like I said,
I've got something really good.
Anonymity. Do not respect people's anonymity if they are using theirs to harm other people, especially to dox anons or to harm people who are already out there trying to do their best. Those people are not deserving of their anonymous status. They lost that. So also, if you see Nazbols or anti-fascist groups, because that's what many of these groups are, going around doing that, and then it happens to them, you can't really, because you'll see it. You'll see an Antifa group.
You have to be wary and notice
people.
patterns of entrapment. You have to develop the acute awareness and the sensibilities associated with knowing when people are out to entrap you or to waste your time.
Let me finish.
This can be developed with great ease.
So you'll see an Antifa group going around bothering people. And then when they're dealt with, other people in the chats and spaces will think, oh, I can't be dealing with this. Oh, I'm leaving. I can't stand all this infighting. What they should really see is, no, look, there's a bunch of leftists here. They've been dealt with. That's the task at hand. You can't just come into nationalism or whatever you want to call it and think it's going to be an easy ride. There are going to be leftists in all your spaces trying to coerce you and thwart you and trick you and be full of shit. So when they get dealt with or they get kicked out, you need to have something about you that can see that and try and have the perceptive awareness and see that these are bad eggs being dealt with. It's not, oh, this space, here we go again. Those spaces are the exact places that wrong-uns hone in on to ruin your day. So for the final conclusion, I'll remind you that the only argument that you need when someone's trying to get you to Fed post, I'll make 2 points here. ever have to say is, it's not in my legal interest to answer you. So if you're having a reasonable discussion with people, and they try and drag you into a discussion about specific genocides and things like that from the last 100 years, and you know that answering it is, you can do it, but it might put you in legal issues, just say to them with confidence, it's not in my legal interest to answer your question, and I believe it's either a loaded question or misleading, or with the intent of harming me, because you know the dangerous territory around said discussions. By saying that, you've shut down your need to answer it, and you've highlighted the fact that the conversation being dangerous is suspicious enough as it is. So I cannot advise that. If someone's putting you in a situation that you know you've got tens of answers for, or even if you don't, you see just trying to figure it out is going to cause you serious legal questions, then just say it's not in my legal interest. And if they say, oh, it's a cop out, no, you are fully aware of the system today has put such a restriction on speech that we're not free to discuss sensitive topics. Therefore, just by asking you is a loaded question. Okay. So my
That
final
is
final
indeed likely the best way to go about it. You come across entrapment operatives. If you're not able to dog them off, tell them it's not in my legal interest to elaborate on this topic further. And if they don't acquiesce to that, then you know 100% for certain that they are matter-of-factly, objectively speaking, an entrapment operative.
Even if they're not an entrapment operative, they're a risk to you.
Yes, even
they're a
if they're not an
liability to
entrapment
you.
operative, they're a malicious amateur.
Absolutely.
Before we go off, before we end the stream, I want to briefly narrate a little something something. It's called Chapter 14, Third Lesson, Hard Work on Being a Dark Lord. 2 minutes, sir. Being a Dark Lord is no easy thing, Morsang. Often people get in the Dark Lord business because they think it is an easy ride with nothing but conquests of every type. Loot, snappy clothes, and fortresses. Well, if that's what you think it's all about, then do yourself a favor and go do something else, like mugging. Being a Dark Lord is a hard road to travel down. It's one where you are constantly swimming upstream. There's always another mountain to climb. You'll feel like you're pissing in the wind, struggling to keep your head above water. No tired metaphor quite manages to convey just how hard it is being a Dark Lord. You're not appreciated at all. People raise armies against you. They go out of their way to slander you and tell lies about your personal life that involve farmyard animals. They'll try to destroy your armies and bring your fortress crashing down after all the hard work. It's so inconsiderate. Even those who work for you are never happy. They always want more. There's not enough blood in the world for some. So why bother, you might ask? Indeed, thought Morsang. If the book was trying to put him off the idea of being a Dark Lord, it was doing a good job. Enough of that thinking, Morsang. The fact is, you don't have a choice. It's like asking a bird why it flies. You are a Dark Lord. It's what you do, period. There are times when it will seem like a poor career choice, but then you'll realize it wasn't a choice in the first place. You were born to rule and to conquer, born to wear black clothing and terrify all those around you. So you are a Dark Lord. Get used to it. The only real question to ask yourself is, how do I be the best Dark Lord this miserable world has ever seen? How can I forge a legacy that will last forever? Shall I go down in history as a death bringer or a privy cleaner? And once your resolve is set, don't doubt, don't stop believing. Pull on the black robe and show the world who is the boss. It's there for the taking. Have faith, all of you.
Absolutely fantastic. So, final conclusion, ladies and gents, and a final reminder that when anyone tries to put you in a corner, and when you're speaking to people from the world that are yet to wake up, if there's any of them left, Remind them that loving your own is not the same as hating others. If they keep asking you what you mean, then they'll never figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, also develop acute awareness of malicious intent. Entrapment operatives are always seething with malicious intent, gentlemen. You notice an excessive amount of malicious intent in someone, likelihood is they might be an entrapment operative. Notice their behavioral patterns and their psychodynamic associations and the cause-effect relationships between the two. Be serious about it. They sure as fuck are.
Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope to see you soon. As always, please think for yourself. Al, can you mute up for me once you say goodbye?
Aye, sir. Take it easy, ladies and gentlemen, and maintain acute awareness of wrong-uns. Till next time.